his number one son, because his aircon is quite recent, quite just a couple of years old, but the aircon in the living room and in my bedroom is over 20 years old, so it needs replacing. But it's on the list. It's on the list. You know what that list is like. Okay, so first I want to make you laugh. Well, it made me laugh. Sorry if you don't find something funny in true crime. You know, it's depressing enough, isn't it? But, you know, we've been laughing at these artists' impressions of Erin because, you know, you're not allowed to show photos. I've just found out, actually, I think they've actually been live streamed, these appeal hearings. So I probably could have watched them, but you're not allowed to retransmit them or, you know, anything. That's how we end up with these artists' impressions. I'm sorry, it just made me laugh. So I put 3 of them together and I thought, we need something to make us smile. So these are the artist's impressions, or a couple of them. I'm going to do a montage. I'm going to do a video of them. If I was Erin, I'd be pretty peed off, to be honest. I don't know if she gets to see these or not. That one in the middle, I mean, especially, you know, I'm trying to think what she reminds me of. It's some guy. I think, you know, I don't know. Just, they're not very flattering, are they, you know? I noticed that, do you think that the artist is taking the piss out of Erin? Maybe, I don't know. But she's always got that pained look on her face because, you know, she always, it's all, you know, she always tries to make people feel sorry for her. You know, she's the wronged party in this. Oh, I love them. I got all their names wrong and I forgot who was who. And I criticised them to my Facebook friends. Apparently, Erin is obsessed with true crime. Apparently, she loves true crime. And now, of course, she's a big star of true crime podcasts, obviously, not only mine. Lots of people are talking about Erin. You know, there's it's a very, very famous case, a very high-profile case. Quizzical, do you think so? Do you think actually Erin looks worse than that? That's it, Kelly. David Mello, the politician, isn't it? Yeah, I was thinking, who does she look like on that middle one? That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, David Mello. Yeah. I wonder if I can find a picture. Oh, I will. I'm going to put a video together because it'll make us smile. But David Mello, of course. Let's see if I can find a picture of him that looks like. Oh dear, oh dear. I think if I was her, I'd be getting some proper photos released so people, because these are awful. Anyway, they're all done by the same artist. She seems to have gone, oh God, yeah, it does look so much like him. She seems to have gone to the Scream School of Art, doesn't she? So David Mello was an English politician, a British politician, isn't he? Let's see. I'll show a picture of him. Yeah, do you know, Erin is one, you know, it's funny, some people are so full of themselves. No matter what they look like, you know, and I know looks aren't important, but you know, some people who are, you know, truly good looking, beautiful, even models, they're so conscious of their appearance, they don't even think that they are attractive. And then you get people like Erin's one of those people, I think, and you know, you may agree with me or not, where she's got such a view of herself, not only the way she looks, but she just thinks she's so clever as well. You know, she's got this and she thinks she can sort of hoodwink anybody. Like she thought she was this David Mellor. I mean, he's older now. She's a spit, absolute spit of David Mellor. Especially that one in the middle. There you go. Yeah, maybe a picture of him when he was younger, when he had dark hair as well. So, but yeah, they're twins. Yeah, brothers from another mother. Oh, Dios mío. If you did not laugh, you definitely would cry. So, yeah, I wanted to show you these. So these are the same artist who's doing these, paintings of Erin. She'll probably sell them. It's funny because normally they just do sketches, don't they? But these are more like actual paintings. Do you think she's going to do an exhibition of them eventually? Maybe. Don't know. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the thumbnail because, of course, this has got a photo of the victims on. Yeah, poor Don and Gail and Heather, and there's Ian. He's got to live, he survived, and luckily he did survive, but he's got to live with all the trauma, hasn't he? And you know what, Erin, she doesn't give a shit. She does not give a shit about anything except Erin, does she? Yeah, very selfish woman. Very, very selfish. Typical sociopath, in my opinion. Yeah, you can get it on, or it's finished now, Joanne. So, but I've only just discovered today you can. Look, I'll show you. I found it. Erin Patterson appeals live streamed. I keep forgetting that they do live stream some things in Australia. The same with the Patrick Stevenson. Samantha Murphy's killer. Probably a lot of his hearings you could probably watch, but you're not allowed to share photos, or you're not supposed to. Let me show you this. Yeah, Erin Patterson appeals live streamed. And it says the appeal hearings in relation to the matter of Director of Public Prosecutions versus Erin Patterson will be publicly live streamed. The two appeals are an appeal by the DPP against the sentence imposed and an appeal by Erin Patterson for the Court of Appeal to review. The Court of Appeal will live stream the appeals on Wednesday the 19th and Thursday the 20th, beginning at 10:15 each day. I've only just found this and it's just finished. I'm a bit annoyed with myself. The hearing must not be recorded, rebroadcast, or transmitted, including by taking a photograph, screenshot, audio and/or visual recording, and this includes posting on social media. So, yeah, Judge Christopher Beale sentenced Erin on Monday, the 8th of September 2025 to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 33 years. So the DPP has filed an appeal against the sentence, specifically in relation to the fixing of a non-parole period on the length of that non-parole period. And Ms. Patterson has filed an application for leave to appeal against conviction on 7 grounds. So there you go. I missed that completely. That's really annoyed me because I've literally just found it and it's just finished. So I couldn't have broadcast it to you guys, but I could have watched it. I'm really angry with myself. Anyway, never mind. Not really anything I can do about it now. So let's hear what happened today. Oh, so I see what the BBC. Can you hear me okay? Because I think I went off for a minute there. Can you hear me okay? Just let me know, anyone, if you. I think you can hear me okay now. I think it did go off for a minute, but it should be back on now. So let's see what it said. So when it started off, the BBC coverage, just a recap that there are 3 judges who will decide this case. Justice Stephen McLeish, Justice Leslie Taylor, and Justice Peter Kidd are the judges that are hearing this case in Melbourne. As appeal court judges, they had no involvement with the trial in Morwell last year, but it will be up to them to decide whether or not the appeals by both Erin Patterson and the public prosecutor are successful. If they do not all agree on the decision, the case will be decided by a majority vote of 2-3, and the opinion of the 2 agreeing judges becomes the final order of the court. So these 3 judges will be deciding if these appeals are successful or not and can go ahead. So it's a very complex procedure. So what are Patterson's appeal arguments in a nutshell? Patterson's legal team say she did not receive a fair trial. There were bits of evidence the jurors should never have seen, her lawyers argue, and others from their own case, which they were barred from including in the way that they wanted to. The defense also say that the prosecution was inconsistent on their evidence about a motive, and that 5 days of cross-examination of their client was unfair and oppressive. I mean, that's ridiculous. She volunteered to give evidence in her own defense. That's unusual. There was nobody, no other defense witness except her. And now she's saying she was cross-examined in an unfair and oppressive way. Did she do that on purpose? So I think she's very Machiavellian, Erin. You know, I think she would deliberately have done things that later she might have been able to call into question. Finally, they say a fundamental irregularity occurred while the jury were deliberating, which fatally undermined the integrity of the verdicts. The jurors were supposed to be isolated, but accommodation shortages meant they shared a hotel with members of the prosecution, a key police witness, and journalists. But there is no evidence they interacted with them. I think they'll be struggling with that argument, because the thing is, this case, through Erin's request, was held in a tiny place, Morwell, and there was only one hotel, so where else were they supposed to stay? You know, and if there's no evidence that they colluded at all, you know, I think they'll be struggling to uphold that, to be honest. So the Crown prosecutors start first, and they're continuing to rebut the claims made by Patterson's lawyers yesterday. Day 2 of the appeal. It's being live streamed again. Oh, I'm so annoyed that I missed that. With 2 shots One focused on the three appeal judges and the other facing the court, which doesn't look as busy as it did yesterday. Erin Patterson is tuning into the hearing via a video link, so she's not in court herself. But the lead investigator, Stephen Eppenstall, is once again sitting on the wooden benches behind both legal teams. We can't see Ian Wilkinson, so of course Ian was there, the sole survivor of the lunch who was in court yesterday and attended much of last year's trial. But there are other members of the victims' families who are now familiar faces. Ian probably just can't face that woman again. He probably hopes he never ever sees him, he never sees her again. I'm annoyed that I missed this live streaming. Anyway, so then the prosecutors were up in court this morning explaining their case, but we also have their written submissions to the judges. They used 70 pages to rebut Erin Patterson's lawyer's arguments for why her conviction should be overturned. But perhaps the punchiest paragraph is saved for the very end. In it, they argue that it was inevitable that Patterson would be found guilty. The subtext being that whatever holes her lawyers tried to pick and legal arguments they tried to make, the evidence which put her behind bars was extraordinarily strong. Once it was conceded that the applicant had prepared and served a poisonous meal to the lunch guests, the only live issue before the jury was whether the prosecution had excluded the reasonable possibility of culinary misadventure, they wrote. The circumstances surrounding the lunch invitation, the serving of the applicant's meal on a different plate, the entirely different medical outcomes for the applicant as compared to the lunch guests, combined with the extensive array of incriminating conduct, pointed overwhelmingly to a deliberate act of poisoning. In all the circumstances, guilty verdicts were inescapable. So remember some of the they're just giving us a little recap here of some of the key evidence from the trial. Remember the orange plate? Survivor Ian, and this has never been found. Survivor Ian Wilkinson recounted watching food go onto 4 grey plates and an orange one for Erin. I've puzzled about it since lunch, his wife had said, according to a witness. Is Erin short of crockery? An orange cake. Detailing the lunch publicly for the first time from the witness stand. Do you remember Erin said that she was bulimic? She'd had a secret struggle with bulimia. She said she'd been regularly binge eating and purging since her teens, something her defense team suggested accounted for her lack of symptoms. And some red flags. As her victims suffered in hospital, Erin was covering her tracks, prosecutors alleged. The day after she was discharged from hospital, CCTV captured Erin travelling to a local dump and disposing of a food dehydrator, later found to contain traces of poisonous mushrooms. She was also using 3 phones around the time of the lunch, 2 of which disappeared shortly afterwards. The one she did hand over to police had been repeatedly wiped. So that's a bit of this is the family tree. Yeah, these are the people who died. Don Patterson, his wife Gail. They're, of course, the parents of Erin's estranged husband, Simon. Heather Wilkinson, the sister of Gail, she died. And her husband, the uncle of Simon, Heather's husband, he just barely clung to life. And now, thankfully, he seems healthy enough. So those were the victims. So the defence has argued, so here's a death cap mushroom here. The defence has argued that photos of wild mushrooms taken in Patterson's kitchen back in 2020 should have been allowed into the brief of evidence, as they could have used it to demonstrate the long-standing innocent interest in picking and eating wild mushrooms they say their client had. Instead, they say she had to take to the witness stand to explain this, undermining her right to silence. Now, don't forget that Erin, really, she was her own worst enemy, because it was Erin who said initially she had never foraged for mushrooms. This is what made Erin seem so shady, is because instead of when she was first asked, where did you get the mushrooms from? First of all, she said she'd bought them in an Asian supermarket. And then she was asked, have you ever gone foraging for mushrooms? And she said, no, never. Have you ever had a dehydrator? No, never. And then she's caught, offloading one at the tip. So I think Erin's biggest problem, if you like, or she was a fool to herself, because it was Erin who lied about everything. And why lie? Why not when they very first said to her, well, where did you get the mushrooms from? When they first suspected it was death cap mushrooms. Why didn't she say, oh, well, I foraged them. Oh, my God, I must have foraged the wrong type of mushroom. Do you know what I mean? Hi, Deb's there. So the defence has argued that photos of wild mushrooms taken in Patterson's kitchen should have been allowed in. Instead, they say she had to take to the witness stand to explain this. So they wanted to demonstrate the long-standing innocent interest in picking and eating wild mushrooms they said their client had. But the thing is, as I say, why didn't she just say that right from the beginning? She only admitted or said that she foraged mushrooms, when it was becoming clear that her other story wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. So Crown Prosecutor Jeremy McWilliams says the judge was right to leave the photos aside, as there is no evidence that Patterson ever had an innocent interest in picking wild mushrooms, let alone eating them. Nothing in the images suggested that the mushrooms were being prepared for eating or that they were later eaten. One can't accidentally include poisonous mushrooms in a dish if one doesn't have a tendency to cook with wild mushrooms. That's the point, he adds, referring to Patterson's claim she had accidentally involved death cap mushrooms in her beef Wellingtons. Yeah, exactly. Exactly what people are saying in chat's exactly right. If she didn't know, is that the first time she ever cooked with wild mushrooms? How could it be accidental? And why wasn't she ill? And why did she have a different colour plate? And why did her children not get ill when they were eating the leftovers? Anyway, he also rattles through the testimonies of Erin Patterson's estranged husband Simon and the couple's children, who said they'd never gone foraging with her mother as she claimed. Oh, so that was it. She even called into question, I remember now, called into question the testimony of her own children, who said they'd never gone foraging for wild mushrooms. She made it out it was like a family thing that they did together, and then her kids said, oh no, we've never been foraging for wild mushrooms. So, it was, she even sort of threw her own kids under the bus, threw everybody under the bus. She said Ian was lying or mistaken, the kids were lying or mistaken, everyone was lying or mistaken, except for Erin. So, if you followed the trial closely last year and now you're watching the appeal, you'll notice that Erin has different barristers representing her, but actually she still retains the same solicitors, Bill Duguay and Ophelia Holloway. And these are the lawyers who've been working on her case from the beginning. So it's just the people in court that have changed, because of course it was Colin Mandy, wasn't it, during her trial, and he seemed to give up halfway through. Even Colin Mandy knew she was guilty. And Sophie Stafford, they were the familiar faces in Morwell, but now it's Richard Edney and Veronica Drago. I wonder which hotel they stayed in. You know, there's only one hotel in this town. There are lots of reasons legal representation changes. It could be a timing issue or a desire for a team specialised in appeal matters, which are more technical, less narrative-led, and take a completely different shape to trials. Edney has extensive experience in the appeal court, and according to the Victorian Bar, a group that represents barristers in the state, Veronica Drago works with matters involving complex expert evidence, something we saw a lot of in the trial last year. So here they are. That's Veronica Drago and that's Richard Edney, and they are speaking for Erin in court. So apparently there was a rare show of emotion from Erin as the prosecution continued. They said, "We can't see Erin Patterson, who is watching the proceedings from prison on the live stream, but those who are in court can. Our broadcast partners, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, say she was seen shaking her head and saying no as the prosecution discussed her foraging history in court. They described it as a rare sign of emotion from Patterson, who throughout her trial largely sat still and quiet, blinking often but reacting rarely. Patterson's legal team is arguing, amongst other things, that the trial judge erred in disallowing photos they say would have supported her claim that she long loved foraging for wild mushrooms. Instead, Patterson had to take to the witness box to discuss this evidence which undermined her right to silence. Although the prosecution has said there's absolutely no evidence of this innocent interest. Now, this is interesting. So the infamous fake cat Facebook post comes to light. So I don't know if you remember this. I didn't touch on it much because it's supposed to be a fake post, but I don't know. Anyway, appeal hearings are dense and technical, and we're hearing a lot of stuff which is quite tangential, whatever that means, but it's not all dull. One of the most interesting bits of evidence, which was banned from last year's trial, what became known in court as the cat post, has just been mentioned again. So in 2020, Erin Patterson posted a photo of mushrooms in a Poisons Help Facebook group. The caption saying something like, "Help, my cat has eaten one of these mushrooms and has become very sick. Are they poisonous?" So she did post that. I mean, that was there, posted. That's, you know, unless someone hacked her account, she definitely posted it. But the problem is she didn't own a cat. So ultimately, trial judge Justice Christopher Beale ruled that the post was too old and not directly relevant. barring the prosecutors from using it to argue that Patterson had been investigating different types of poisons. McWilliams is bringing it up in court today as part of the discussion about whether other photos Patterson had taken of wild mushrooms should have been part of the trial, the brief of evidence. Then, cross-examination of Patterson was fair and strongly justified, the court hears. Crown Prosecutor Jeremy McWilliams now deals with ground 5 of the defence's appeal, that the prosecution's cross-examination of Patterson was unfair and oppressive. He says the claim is thoroughly without substance, as the way Patterson was questioned in court was careful, thorough, fair and professional. Patterson's lawyers have said that the questions put to her during the trial were repetitive and cherry-picked evidence of other witnesses. But McWilliams says these lines of inquiry were not just permissible, but required and strongly justified. He adds that where there's conflict between what Patterson claims and the evidence of a witness, it is incumbent on the prosecution to put that conflict to her so she can respond to it. And during the trial, Patterson's own lawyers described her as a pedantic witness, Mr. McWilliams says. So it was justified that the prosecutor had to repeatedly rephrase questions to receive a responsive answer. Also, she told a lot of lies, didn't she, when she was giving her evidence? There were a lot of things that came up that she said. Thing is, if you decide to speak in your own defense, as soon as you make a statement, you're opening it up for the prosecutors to, comment on that statement. So when Erin said, oh, well, she went for the gastric band appointment, and then Nanette Rogers found out that the place that Erin said she went for the gastric band appointment, they didn't do gastric bands, that kind of thing. So that's why it's so dangerous to speak in your own defense if you're being prosecuted with something, because you then open it up for the prosecution. Anything you say then can be challenged, whereas if you say nothing, they have to just concentrate on whatever evidence they already have. So Erin, again, to me, she thought she was so clever, but she actually wasn't. So then, why did the judge set a non-parole period for Patterson? So she was given a non-parole period of 33 years. In other words, she could not be considered for release for that time. Now, let's face it, anybody else who killed 3 people with premeditation and nearly killed a 4th would have got life without parole. Justice Beale said that the reason for offering any hope of release was the conditions that he felt that Erin would face in prison, because he said that at the very least, there is a substantial chance that for your own protection, you will continue to be held in solitary confinement for years to come. Now, it is really ridiculous, that, isn't it? So is he really saying that because she's likely to get held in solitary confinement for 33 years, that she should then be able to be unleashed upon the world, despite what she's done? It's her own fault that she's going to be, if she ends up in solitary confinement, which isn't, 100% yet. We don't know if she's going to spend 33 years in solitary confinement or not. It's her own fault. That's what, when you kill 3 people who trust you, who were praying for you to recover from cancer, which you never had in the first place, then you get solitary confinement. Well, you've made your bed, you've got to lie in it. You shouldn't have killed those 3 people then and tried to kill the 4th one. I don't understand that way of thinking by Mr. Beale. I think it's complicated things. Anyway, the prosecutors say this was overstated and amounts to sentencing on the basis of a speculative prediction. And I agree, because we don't know that she's going to spend 33 years in solitary confinement. We can't possibly know that yet. So there were several reasons why Patterson may see her conditions ease, they wrote, including regular reviews of where she was locked up and that improved staffing levels. They also argue that Patterson's need for protection in prison was due solely to the notoriety of her crimes, which will dissipate with time and a reduction in media interest. Exactly. She is like, everybody talking, this has brought it all to the forefront again. But, there'll be other crimes that will happen and she'll pass into notoriety, but should be forgotten as time goes on as a high, because there'll be other high profile cases. Well, if she lets it happen, because I don't think Erin will let it happen that she gets forgotten. She likes being talked about. So the response from Patterson's legal team is complex, but in a nutshell, they say this is not a grounds for appeal. This excluded as evidence. The photos showed mushrooms in the wild as well as mushrooms with dirt on them in a kitchen setting, and proved that Patterson had an innocent interest in mushrooms or foraging mushrooms. A judge on the panel points out that the photos are dated 2020, so are limited in what conclusions can be drawn on Patterson's mushroom foraging habits. Drago also refers to online posts where Patterson asks for advice on how to dehydrate mushrooms, which she argues shows an interest in mushrooms. But don't forget, when Erin was first interviewed by the police, she said she had never foraged for mushrooms. Never. It's her lies that have done for her, So the panel brings up a point that the post only referred to mushrooms bought from a supermarket, not wild foraged ones. And Drago then reasserts the point made yesterday that Patterson was denied her right to silence and was forced to give evidence about her interest in mushrooms because the photos were not allowed to be used in court. And just before the appeal moved on to the sentencing, the judges asked more about the issue that dominated so much of yesterday, what Patterson's lawyers call a catastrophic mix-up that led to the jury staying at the same hotel as prosecutors and a key witness. They are asking the prosecution if any more investigations are needed and more questions should be asked to make sure that the jurors did not have irregular contact at the hotel. The director of public prosecution, Brendan Kissane, is adamant it doesn't, saying it was all dealt with at the time. It was not a matter of perception, he said, but it was about the evidence. If anyone had been seen by jury supervisors known as jury keepers doing anything they should not have, it would have been communicated to the judge. There's no need for this court to go on a fishing expedition to see if jury keepers need to be cross-examined about what occurred because there's been no contact. Anyway, then the court, so there's less than 2 hours left before the end of the court's working day, and they are only now turning to the prosecution's appeal against the sentence. This is a much shorter submission, 10 pages, God, if that's short, compared to the 78 pages submitted by Erin Patterson's team, who are trying to overturn the conviction. Oh, please, God, they cannot. Please, God, I tell you, I think I'll just give up if her conviction gets overturned. Do you just think, oh, anyway, we have to wait and see what happens? It's also a simpler argument with only two grounds for appeal. First, that the judge's reason for allowing parole because of the harsh conditions expected in prison because of her notoriety is not supported by the evidence. And secondly, that the sentence is what they call manifestly inadequate, that Patterson should be locked up for life with no chance of ever walking free. So the prosecution challenges the trial judge's solitary confinement findings. The prosecution starts off their argument reiterating that Patterson should not be granted any chance at parole. The trial judge had wrongly believed that Patterson would remain in solitary confinement for years to come. Supreme Court Justice Christopher Beale had sentenced Patterson to life in prison with a non-parole period of 33 years, during which she will be 82. And in handing down the sentence, the judge had found there was a substantial chance she would be held in solitary confinement for years to come. The prosecution, however, says Patterson shouldn't be granted any chance at parole, maintaining her mushroom poisonings fell into the worst category of offending too right. Was 33 years the right number? The prosecution argues that Patterson should never be freed. Of course she should never be freed. They say that if the appeal court disagrees, then it should at least increase the minimum sentence and they call 33 years manifestly inadequate. The minimum term open to the judge for the offences was 30 years, and in written arguments they say adding just 3 to this lower limit utterly fails to reflect the gravity of the offending or vindicate the dignity of each of the 4 victims. Now, lawyers will often look to previous cases for guidance, and while acknowledging there was no factually comparable case, I don't think anyone's ever done anything like this before, the prosecution cited 2 examples where people were given longer parole periods for serious murders. In the case of murdered comedian Eurydice Dixon and Osman Shatafah, who shot his daughter and son-in-law over a wedding invite. Patterson's lawyers reject this in their written rebuttal, saying the purportedly comparable cases which are relied upon again on appeal are not only of little assistance, but also fail at a fundamental level to adhere to the clear edict that other cases should not and are not be treated as precedents. And the prosecution says harsh jail conditions should not matter in sentencing. No, they shouldn't. What's the point in going to prison if it's not harsh? What are you going to do? Send her off to Butlins or something, to a holiday camp? Because that's the whole. You murder 3 people and try and murder a 4th, then you deserve harsh conditions. I don't understand this. Oh, well, she might be in solitary confinement, and we don't even know yet if she's going to be in solitary confinement for 33 years. But if she is, well, that's her own fault, isn't it? It's her own fault. Nobody else did it. She did it. It's like, I just don't get it at all. Kissane lists a range of things that Patterson has access to while in prison. She has a treadmill. Doesn't look like she's using it much, but she has got it. A small exercise yard, a library, leisure centre, and regular video visits with her children. It's not really harsh conditions, is it? It's not really Belson, is it? He says that while Patterson's notoriety won't diminish, the interest in who she is will, and the trial judge's consideration of harsher than usual prison conditions was not the appropriate way to deal with the fixing of a non-parole period. Your Honour cannot sentence on the basis of prediction or speculation. No, I mean, sentencing depends on the crime. That's it. You can't sentence someone and they say, oh, but they might have a tough time of it in prison, so we'll take a couple of years off, or we'll give them a chance at parole, which really they're not entitled to. Is it just me? Is it just me, or what the hell are they talking about? So the prosecution says its argument takes into account the seriousness of the crimes. One of the judges had earlier said in response to Hussein that the sentence had included a realistic chance of parole given Patterson's age, or it would simply be an artificial promise of parole. Hussein then said the court ought not to sentence based on its estimate of one's life expectancy. Yeah, I mean, why 33 years? I mean, she might live 50 years. Or she might only live another 5 years. She said she had cancer, but patently she hasn't. But, nobody knows how long they're going to live. In my experience of true crime, I think prisoners live quite a long time because they get looked after, they get the best hospital treatment, so they only have to sneeze and they're down the bloody doctors. They get everything looked after, they get their 3 meals, they don't have to worry about whether they can pay their electric bill or not. Though not that Erin ever had that problem. Hussein further argued that the prosecution's argument that the minimum sentence of 33 years was manifestly inadequate takes into account all relevant sentencing matters, including the seriousness of offending. So now, when they heard from Patterson's barrister, this is what they said. Her current circumstances are clearly solitary confinement, he tells the court, and that according to international conventions, a prolonged period of such conditions is deemed to be any period of more than 15 days. Edney also points out that the features listed by the prosecution, such as a library and leisure centre, are not always available to Patterson due to staff shortages and other reasons. Oh, didn't? Oh my God, get the violins out. There's a real practical deficit in those programmes being achieved given the nature of the custodial environment, he said. And he points out that her cell is 4 metres by 2 metres, describing it as an incredibly small confined space to be for some 22 to 23 hours a day. Well, hey, what about a coffin? What about a coffin that she put 3 people into? Yes, that's a very confined space that they ended up in. Coffins. An incredibly small confined space to be in. Forever. For eternity. She took their lives from them. Why are we supposed to feel sorry for her? That's the whole point of prison. What is the point of prison if it's too cushy, too comfy? What's the point of it? It's just ludicrous, this to me. Are we supposed to feel sorry for someone who murdered 3 people, put them in a confined space, i.e. a coffin, and nearly killed a 4th? We're supposed to feel sorry for her? She's lucky she didn't get the death penalty. She's lucky that Australia hasn't got the death penalty. The coldness of what she did. This is what I'll never get over. She invited those people round to lunch. She sat there, watched them eat, say how delicious it was. Oh, thank you, Erin. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I can't finish mine. So then Don said, oh, I'll have it. And Erin watched all that. What was she thinking? What was going on in that evil mind of hers as she was smiling to herself, thinking how stupid they were, praying for her because she said she had cancer. And all the time she has, given them a ticking time bomb to die in agony. And then she said goodbye to him. What was it? Kiss. See you in church. Oh, I was supposed to feel sorry for her. I have no sympathy for her. She's horrible. Trial judge's sentence was unimpeachable. Turning now to the prosecution's argument that the trial judge handed down a manifestly inadequate sentence, Edney says his team believes that Christopher Beale did everything right in this complex sentencing exercise. So, just to recap, he sentenced Patterson to life with a non-parole period of 33 years. He's clearly taken into account all relevant considerations, says Edney, and he added that Mr. Beale made appropriate findings about how serious this matter was. And he described Beale's decision as unimpeachable. Well, do you know what? If it's unimpeachable, why, just let it go then. You're the one who's appealing. I mean, the prosecution are only appealing because they appealed. Anyway, then the court adjourned. Several minutes were spent revisiting the legal definition of solitary confinement. Towards the end of the hearing, and the judges have reserved their decision in both appeals, and it's not clear when a verdict might be reached. So these are the main points by the prosecutors. The huge effort over a long period to orchestrate the fatal lunch, from learning about death caps, obtaining enough to kill, sending the invites, cooking the meal, plenty of time for Patterson to change her mind. The enormous betrayal of trust. The Pattersons and Wilkinsons accepted the lunch invite, completely unsuspecting, prosecutors say. Not only did the respondents sit by and watch her victims consume the deadly meal, but the meal ended with a prayer for her, following her lie about having been diagnosed with cancer. The murderous intention continued long after the lunch. As the guests lay critically ill, Patterson could have admitted using forage mushrooms without admitting her guilt, the prosecution team wrote. But she denied it. Remember? Yeah, she did. She said no. Said she bought them in an Asian supermarket. She denied it was possible to police and health workers even when she knew that some of the victims were on life support. So she sent the mushroom inspector on a wild goose chase around all those Asian supermarkets trying to find, because, she insisted they were from an Asian supermarket. And the health inspector had to go around all those Asian supermarkets to make sure there'd been no other poisonous ones sold. And then the cruelty of the method of murder. Patterson feeding her guests death caps led to shocking illnesses, and she knew it. She knew they were going to die in agony. I mean, it would have been better if she would have just shot them. At least it would have been quick. She knew they would go through horrendous pain, vomiting, diarrhea. That, with death cap mushrooms, your organs literally die inside you. And she knew it. Yes, Joanne, she obviously made sure hers was mushroom-free, yeah. And then the elaborate cover-up, lying to the police, disposing of evidence. Perhaps most famously, the food dehydrator dumped at her local rubbish tip. The one she said she didn't have, and she'd never had a dehydrator. She dumped it at the rubbish tip and it had traces of death caps on it. And of course, the police found the instruction manual in her house. She forgot about that, didn't she? So, yeah, she's a thicko who thinks she's clever. So, the Court of Appeal has not yet indicated when it might reach a verdict, but these deliberations could take months. Oh, God, these poor families. If the 3 appeal court judges decide to overturn her convictions, please God no, they could order the case be retried or even fully acquit her. If the prosecution's appeal is successful, Patterson could see her parole period being extended beyond 33 years, or she may even be sentenced to life without parole. So that's the decisions that the judges have got to do now. That's where it's going now. We've got to leave it with those 3 judges, and it's got to be, they don't all have to agree, but 2 of them have to agree, which, so yeah, hi hyperheroes. Yeah, I agree. Most of us at some point in our lives have had food poisoning. That's the only thing we can relate this to, isn't it? But of course it's worse than normal food poisoning, but that's the only thing that we could relate it to, really. I think all of us probably food poisoning at some point. It's so painful. That was the other thing that let us know that Erin is a liar, because Erin, even though she said she had diarrhea, you know what it's like if you've got an upset tummy, whether it's from food poisoning or you just feel a bit bleh. You can't be away from the toilet. You won't be setting off on a car journey like she did, supposedly taking her son to his flying lesson for an hour. What was it? An hour and a half, 2-hour journey in white trousers, even though supposedly she had diarrhea and upset tummy. I don't know about you, but if I've got an upset tummy, I don't even leave the house unless, you've got absolutely no choice. And food poisoning is very painful. It's horrible, and it knocks you flat as well, doesn't it? It's like if you've got food poisoning, you literally lose at least a day out of your life, if not a couple of days. And not Erin, though. She was off. She made a 9-second toilet stop. 9 seconds she was in the toilet for, even though supposedly she had diarrhea. She stopped at the service station, didn't she? For 9 seconds. I think that's where she might have got rid of that plate that nobody's ever found. She's a horrible woman, actually. Horrible. I think her children have had a lucky escape, personally. It's a shame that they've lost their mum. Maybe she was a good mum, but not really. She took their grandparents away from them. She tried to kill Simon about 3 times, their father. She was lucky she didn't get tried for that, because in the end, the prosecutors decided they had enough evidence to convict her of these murders. This would be enough, and the attempted murder of Ian. So they didn't go ahead with the case for the attempted murder of Simon cases, because they reckon on at least 3 occasions she tried to kill Simon. I mean, poisoning is quite a common way that women kill people. Yeah. Erin, fascinated with true crime. Remember her Facebook group called her Super Sleuth. Yeah. She thought she could get away with it. I bet she nearly died. When she went to the hospital and they said to her, "Oh, we think it might be death cap mushrooms," I bet she nearly shit herself then. That's for sure. And then she was out, gone, wasn't she? Within 2 minutes, she's like, "Oh, I've got to go home and sort out my daughter's ballet outfit and feed the animals," even though she's just been told that she could be the next one in intensive care. She was gone. Get that dehydrated to the tip, hide the evidence, stage the kitchen scene. Yeah. Anyway, that's where we are. So the appeals have finished, or the hearings have finished. It's up to the judges now to decide which, if any of the appeals that have gone forward, either the one about the brevity of the sentence, or Erin's appeal that a conviction should be quashed, or at least a retrial. We just got to wait and see. And again, my heart just goes out to Ian, to Simon, to everybody, family of the victims, etc. They've got to wait again. They thought it was all over. She was found guilty unanimously, and now she's trying to exercise her, bloody moneybags Erin, Queen Bee. She's in control. Nobody tells her what to do. She's in control of her own destiny, according to her, and everybody else's destiny. Bloody hell, I bet there's a few people who've been to dinner with Erin thinking, "Oh my God, that was quite dangerous." Anyway, listen, please don't forget to press like, subscribe. Thank you to Lily for the jewels that she sent. And thank you. As always, thank you to everybody for your Ko-fis and things like that people have sent. I didn't put my Ko-fi thing up again. I always forget. I should put it up, really. But don't forget, that's where the merchandise is, on the Ko-fi page. Thank you for being a member. That's my Ko-fi page. All the merchandise is 25% off. Thank you for those of you who've ordered stuff. Yeah. Like and subscribe is completely free. And why not become a member? Next Thursday will be our next members live. That's my housekeeping I should do more of, but of course I always forget, but never mind. Okay. Listen, you guys take care, and as always, let me know what you think. Do you think she'll be successful in her appeal? Is there anybody out there who thinks Erin is innocent? I wonder if her friend is still sticking by her. Remember the friend that was sticking by her? I don't know what her kids think about it all. Don't even really know what Simon thinks about it. Isn't he about to release a book, though? He's probably got to wait till this appeal's all over with. I'm sure Simon, her estranged husband and the father of the son of two of the victims, and the nephew of the other victim, Heather, he's got a book coming out. I hope so, Quizzical. I hope she'll be success. I hope she won't be successful in this appeal, but how frustrating. We don't, when are we going to know? We don't know. So just a question of waiting. Is it going to be a week? Is it going to be a month? Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years, it can't be, can it? Oh, thank you, Joanne. Very kind. Thank you, Joanne, for the super sticker. Yeah, how long is this misery going to go on for these victims' families? I don't care how long Erin's misery goes on, because Erin brought it on herself. She did it. She did it. She's been convicted of it. If she's not happy, with her conditions, well, that's her fault, isn't it? So